All right, so we're all going to be watching it from home. We're not in the meeting area.
Right.
So if you're watching it from home, or if you were, what tips would you give us? How do you watch the combine? How should we watch these drills? What should we be looking for?
Don't over break it down.
Okay.
That would be the first thing. Just stay with basics at first. Look at the guy and go, damn, he looks impressive. Damn, that was explosive. Look at him run the 40, especially the first 10, right? Or something like that. Just look for physical traits that are elite. That's the first thing you do, right? And some of the ones that you think are elite, do they just match what I thought, right? Like Ashton Genty, we know he's the best running back in the draft. We just want to see him go out there and run numbers that we're comfortable with in our brain to go, okay, he was everything we thought he was, blah, 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 okay? But yeah, there's going to be those other guys out there where, you know, we had like 2 years ago when Byron Young came out and Yaya Diaby and Derek Hall up in Seattle, right? Guys that weren't household names, but I went, I don't know who these guys are, but they are fucking freak shows, right? Freak shows the way they look just right away. And then they moved around a little bit and you went, that's intriguing. I don't know where they're going to get drafted, but I'm excited to watch them because they looked like NFL pass rushers to me. And then they had a few things they did on the field that also verified their NFL pass rushers, right?
Yeah.
And that's what, don't be like, well, Will, he ran the out route and he didn't plant his foot at the Pythagorean theorem 27-degree angle that he needed to come out of that. Like, that's where you're going. You're way too crazy. Relax. Let's just keep it with the basics.
So none of these, you know, the 40, you're looking at the 40 for
40's
corners, for receivers,
40 is
right?
great for everything to me except for offensive linemen. Because even D linemen, I don't give a shit about the whole 40, but that first 10, D tackle or pass rusher, is usually crucial in their success, right? So let's just start with D linemen.
Okay.
D linemen, D tackles, you know what it's all about. It's quick twitch, and first is their body. If I see a D tackle, the first thing I'm looking at is, you know what I'm looking at. I want to look at his ass and his legs. Can he hold in there when he's getting double teamed by Lane Johnson and, you know, Landon Dickerson of the Eagles? Can he hang in there? A defensive tackle is what we're talking about here, right? Then you got to be able to see, usually incredible upper body strength. I mean, again, the great D tackles in football are who they are because they're special that way. Dexter Lawrence, huge ass, huge legs. Yeah, his belly's big, but I don't care. He's got to hold his ground sometimes. And then you see him up top, and that's why he can throw defenders off him, and that's why he's one of the best D tackles in football. So that's what you want from that position. You get to the pass rushers, I want to see ass and legs, but not quite as thick as the D tackles, but I still want to see power. But you also want to see a little bit of like a speed element to the leg too. You know what I mean? Like a calf muscle that doesn't look like a 330-pound D tackle. Like your calf muscle, you go, that guy's 265 and his calves look like he's a 215-pound running back, right? Those are the things you look for.
I remember you saw Kayvon Thibodeau.
Then arm length.
Body.
Right. Yes.
Him, exactly. And you were like, I didn't like that. What was it specifically about his body?
Too thin below.
Yeah.
Kayvon Thibodeau's been a good player in his career, but I don't think he's been worthy of the number 5 pick to this point still. And, just not rocked up enough in general. Again, my history in the NFL with top-tier pass rushers off the edge are usually your super freaks, usually the guys who take off their shirt in the locker room and you go, oh my gosh, is that a Greek god chiseled out of stone or is that a human? I'm not sure, right? That's usually your top-tier pass rushers in the game. Yeah, and if they're not that, they have a pair of legs like a Von Miller who might not be ripped and jacked, but he's in shape and strong, but he's got a pair of legs on him. And you go, that doesn't even look right. His ass, I think I could put a glass of water on the back there and walk away and it'll stay there, right? Let alone his legs and his hamstring look a certain way.
That'll be a drill
one
day, probably.
Right. So that's when you get into pass rushers, it's that I look for, and then arm length. Arm length is crucial because when Lane Johnson is pushing on you with 35-inch arms at 335 pounds, I don't give a shit how strong you are. Sometimes you're going to be in trouble. So you better have length to be able to keep those arms off you as well. And those are the big things, at least with that position.
So those are some of the measurables there.
Yeah.
What about on the offensive side? You said, 40-yard dash is important, wide receiver, running back. Is it one of those things where if a guy was highly productive in college and the tape looks awesome, but he has a bad 40, does that ruin it in your eyes?
It doesn't ruin it. More times than not, if I see college film and I go, man, he's got 50 and 60-yard touchdown runs everywhere against high-quality competition, Usually I go back, you watch the 40 and you go, well, the wrong people taught him. This guy's fast. Like he didn't get proper training and technique in the 40 here, right? And that's what you got to differentiate a little bit, right? And that can go vice versa sometimes. You can go also and do, this guy gets walked down at the 20-yard mark every time he breaks a run. But now he ran 4.41. And I go, yeah, but he doesn't play that fast.
He studied for the test.
He's been studied. He's perfect, right? He's got it measured exactly. He knew how to lean before he started or move the body to make the clock stop a little. You start a little later, right? He had all the tricks. So those are the things you got to get through. But, yeah, like the offensive side of the ball, wide receivers, running backs, the 40, of course, the first 10, the 5-10-5 is a big deal to me. The 5-10-5, especially for receivers, if you can't like hit the line and explode back and do some of that change of direction stuff, you think you're going to be able to pull away from Patrick Surtain? If you can't like hit the ground and explode out, right? That's definitely one. And then if you want to be that slot receiver, the L drill is huge. The L drill shows the ability of like, there's a reason like the Julian Edelmans of the world and all of that always kill the L drill because that's what they're good at, right? I can make a cut and change direction and turn my hips all these different ways. That's why I'm a great slot route runner. So those are ones I look at, right? Running backs, I want them to be pretty good at that too. If they don't get a free pass, of course, 5-10-5, I mean, how good do you think Barry Sanders 5-10-5 was, right? I mean, it's phenomenal. You got to be able to change directions, explode out of cuts, break arm tackles. And then with the running backs especially, that's another one where if like legs, ass, and if they don't have a neck and shoulders where you go, whoa, that looks freakish, then a lot of times I might not love their look, right? You're going to see Ashton Genty. I saw him at the Super Bowl. He's a specimen. Right, the running back for Ohio State,
Quinshon Judkins,
he's a specimen. They have a look about them where you're like, whoa, that's some dense muscle guy right there, right? And that's what I want to see, at least that position.
What about the guys blocking for him up front? Similar to what you look for on the defensive line, or are there different things?
There's a little difference there. If it's an interior guy, I just want power and size, right? That's the big thing. Of course, you want some athleticism. I get that. He's got to be able to pull and do stuff like that, right? But it's more about quick area quickness, right? Can he get out of the stands and punch a guy here and then, oh, wait, that guy went too far away. I got to get over here and help out my left tackle. But the big thing, too, with those, the guards, is just going to be power, and then the body has to be centered around the midsection, right? You don't see many guards where you're like, well, he's got a six-pack and he's got a real tiny waist, right? No, they're having to hold their ground against 330-pound defensive tackles who are crazy f***ers. So they usually got to be like big in the middle of their body to handle that. Tackles, that's different than the guard. Tackles, I want length. Length is huge, right? You got to find the ability of this unreal combination of length, stoutness, and then they got to be able to move their feet against people like Myles Garrett or Micah Parson and do all of that. It's a special specimen.
Yeah, you more than most people, I feel like, take college tackles and slot him in at guard. You're like, I think he's a guard in the NFL.
Yes, because an NFL tackle is usually a special human being where you go. They're not on every college football team, right? It's NFL tackles that are elite are guys that are just made differently than most humans on earth, whether it's Lane Johnson or Jordan Mailata or Penei Sewell, right? Or Tristan Wirfs. Right? These are guys where they walk into a room and you go, wait, that is a huge man, and it's easy huge. It's not like he's over there squatting 700 pounds a day and I got to eat 74,000 calories to be big, right? And those are rare people. And yes, more times than not, especially with the amount of good pass rushers we have right now in the NFL, more times than not, the college tackle is a guard. And then you jump into Orlando Browns and Ronnie Stanleys and those guys, and you go, oh, no, there's one finally, an NFL tackle.
I'm going to ask you about quarterbacks, but I want to skip back to corners because it's something you opened my eyes to last year, and it was they're running the 40-yard dash, and it's like 4.4 to 4.37 to 4.45, and I'm like, that's all seems to be in the same ballpark here, and you go, that's a huge difference. And they showed it on NFL Network too. It's by the time you get to the 40 yard marker in a 40-yard dash. Yeah. If you're 4.45 and 4.35, we're talking about 3 yards, 2.5 yards right there, which is the difference between covering a guy and him being wide open for a touchdown. And so I would imagine speed is one of the things you're watching most for the corners and safeties.
100%. I mean, corners and safeties, right? And I want to see the 40. I want to see the vertical jump and the broad jump are big, right? Not to say they weren't big for the receivers and all that. We didn't even hit on receivers catching the ball, which is a big thing, but we can get to that later. But yeah, that's to me, it's corners and safeties about raw explosion, right? I'm not really all that worried about their ability to catch the balls. Skills maybe are not as important. It's like, can he fly and will he throw his body around and hit people, right? Especially when it comes to safety. And then the jumping and the broad jumping usually shows that type of explosion, right? It's rare when you see a guy who runs 4.3 that he doesn't have an incredible vertical to go along with it. It's rare. Every now and then you see one. But yeah, that's important to me. And yes, there's a big thing. When you go back through DBs, the great ones in history, they don't run 4.5. Right? Your Darrelle Revises, your Champ Baileys, your Deion Sanders, it's always high 4.2s, 4.3s. Those are the guys you go, he's on an island, we're going to let him go. Right? That was my problem with your Terrion Arnold last year of the Detroit Lions.
We got a question on that. Vanger0724 says, I know how you emphasize that top-level corners need 4.3, 4.4, 40 speed, which lowers players like Terrion Arnold on your board, but could you explain how someone like Joe Hayden was able to have a successful career as an outside corner while running a low 4.5?
Yeah, right. No, and there's a few that come along that way. But Joe Hayden had to do it a little bit more with instincts, brains. He had exceptional change of direction skills, so that helped him, right? His ability to change his hips and flip his hips and do all that. Now, would I sit here be lying and think that he was a hair overrated through his career, right? I'm one of those. Like, he was really good, but did he get paid maybe more than I thought he should have been paid at certain points of his career? Yeah, I do think that. But when you are that guy, yes, you have to have something else about you. And Joe Hayden was incredible instincts, incredible smarts, incredible studier, had very good ball skills, and then his elite change of direction skills, I think, made up for some of that, right? But again, that's not my cup of tea. That's not the guy I would definitely want. And that was our problem with Terrion Arnold. I know he's got some great things about him, but I think what we saw, and I think you would verify this as a Lions fan, when he was on the outside against elite receivers, he could not run with them. He was a walking pass interference call.
He would hold them. He didn't need to run with them.
Right, exactly. So that's where I think eventually he ends up more in the slot. But yeah, that's always going to be my thing with speed. Again, how are you going to cover Malik Neighbors if you run 2/10 slower than him, right? You're not going to cover Malik Neighbors who runs 4.35 and go, well, I ran 4.55. He knows where he's going. I don't, but I'm going to keep up with him? No, negative Ghost Rider, you're not.
Yeah. There's more position questions here. I wanted to ask you about the wide receivers catching. Yeah. What are you looking for with catching?
Catching, I want to see snatchers. They have to be able to snatch the football, right? That's the big thing. I don't want to see like, I got to look it in. I got to look it in. When they go through that gauntlet drill, they look left and right and left and right. They got to be able to just, rip it out of the air, throw it on the ground, rip it out of the air. If you look at the really good receivers in the NFL, that's what they do right now. You can't like catch the ball and let me take 2 or 3 steps as I figure out the ball and how to put it away. When you watch A.J. Brown or Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson catch the ball, they can't wait for the ball to get there. The ball is like still, and they're like, get here so I can get my big hands on it and just rip it away because I don't want to lose any speed. I got to keep up full speed here. I'm trying to go to the house, right? I'm not trying to catch the ball and go down right here. And that to me is the thing to watch for. The people who can just extend their hands and snatch it out of the air and just go right onto the next target and do it. That to me is big. And you'll see some who got to kind of watch it in and cradle it and do all that. And yeah, that won't be a positive thing. Thanks for watching Chris Simms Unbuttoned. Hey, just because the season's over, it doesn't mean we're over. We ain't going anywhere. The NFL never dies.
We're staying right here. Hit subscribe. We got every NFL move. We'll react to that. Plus, Chris has got 4,719 draft prospect profiles to do.
Thanks again for watching. Subscribe. You know where to find us. Peace out, homies.